Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is a professional tarot reader, content creator. She wears many hats. She's from Switzerland. Her name is Vanessaandheriphone. Welcome to the welcome to the podcast. I can't get my words out today. How are you today? How's it going?
I'm okay. I'm okay today. It's not the best period of my life, but I guess a day at a time. So yeah, I'm okay. Maybe I should explain, right? I should say something more than that because for the people listening, I lost my mother this week, and Christian very kindly offered to reschedule, and I said no. I want to go ahead and do it. I think I want to do it, and it's also a lovely tribute to her, especially for the kind of topic that we're going to go into. So it means a lot for me to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I can, I part of me, yeah. I thought about how you would feel like going through this. I've dealt with a lot of loss in my life as well. I'm sure many of our listeners have. And we all deal with, I suppose, grief and things in different ways. And I think that was the first thing that came to me. I mean, I think if I was in that situation, my mind would go to work and just move and move. That's always been how I've got through things, is just work. But I don't know that always works necessarily. But the one thing that you said in your email trail that struck me was you were like, I've received a lot of condolences. This is the first like sort of thing that is different from that. So I want to focus on that. And that I understood straight away. I was like, okay, I get that. Distraction, something else. Let's talk about something. And I get that. I get that because it's, I don't want to focus on this too much, but I feel like it would be wrong not to say at least something. Like the world kind of stops when these things happen, I've noticed. And part of you feels like it's, I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but like, I feel like a part of you feels like it's wrong to just carry on like normal. But then the other part of you is like, well, this is the only way that things can move. Do you know what I mean? It is forward. You have to keep going. And
Absolutely. And we don't have the choice because life does continue and they just stay in another place. They stay in our hearts, in our heads, and in the memories. And it's quite, I feel quite blessed and quite lucky to know that she has created this immense emptiness because it's proportional to how much of an amazing person she was. So I feel lucky. And I agree with that, the fact that you feel like everything should stop. But I also remember coming back from, because we were with her when she passed, and I was coming back, I was riding my bicycle back home, and there were people that I was, crossing on the streets. It was middle of the night, and they were laughing, they were tipsy, and they were having a great time. And it actually made me smile, and it made me happy to know that there were people who were there who were completely alive and living their life, and it felt good. So, and in regards to work, I'm off work for quite some time, but my sister went back to work the next morning. So that's what she needed to do, and she's a teacher, so she didn't just go to work and not put in any energy. She went to work and she was teaching, about she's a doctor, and she was teaching about when end of life experiences. So it was also quite something. I asked her, did you tell them? She said, no, I couldn't. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But we all have different ways of dealing with people passing, and it's important just to respect every person's way. And this is my way of dealing with it. Coming here to your podcast, I'm very, very honored.
I'm honored to have you. I will say one thing to kind of put a bow on it all. With the friends that like I've lost over the years and the people I've lost, one of the things I always think about is this idea of like living in tribute to them. Like through
Absolutely.
through some of the darkest times of my life, I'm not proud to say it, but there's been times when maybe I didn't want to be here. And other than the people in my life, because that's the thing. Yeah, I was watching The Walking Dead the other day, and there's a line in it that struck me. They said the most important thing in this world is people. You can't do anything without people. People are what makes makes life worth living. Without people, you just have nothing. And I think it's very true. People give life, people create everything, energy, an atmosphere, whatever you want to call it. And one of the reasons I decided to stick around was because of the people in my life, people that I love very dearly. And then the other thing is this idea of living in tribute to the people that don't get to be here. And I don't know, I just feel like that's a cool concept. I'll just try to kind of to do that, because I think like life is a gift, and you gotta make the best of it, So
Exactly. My eldest daughter was telling me one day, it just doesn't make sense to be alive. It doesn't make sense. How are we here? It's
yeah,
insane. And she was telling me, some people, they get upset over such stupid things and they don't realize that it's just such a miracle to be here. And you have to honor that miracle. You really do.
yeah. We've been speaking a lot about this in my recent live streams about how life is just kind of like this up and down, up and down, up and down, and sometimes it's more downs than ups, and it's difficult. But I think the one thing I've learned over the years, I'm about to turn 30, and my 20s, I think, if nothing else, has taught me that life will throw a lot at you, and that that ages you. But it's all part of it, and I think it does kind of make you stronger so long as you learn from it and grow from it. But the biggest thing I think it really teaches you is that it will be okay. Like whatever happens, like you'll be able to get through it because you went through all this other stuff, and you're still here, you know.
You survived 100% of all your days. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're big
Yes.
into spirituality and tarot readings. Talk us how you got through into that.
Okay, so I'm originally from a family where my maternal grandparents were missionaries. So they lived back in the West Indies and they went door to door. They were not Jehovah's Witnesses, but something similar, and they would go and get people to join their cult. So that's what my mother had to do as a kid. And then she left that cult-ish religion and moved all the way across the big pond, the Atlantic, and met my father. And that's when she decided that she was an atheist. So was he. He was brought up Protestant, but he's also an atheist. And so when I was a child, I had been given the choice to either believe completely, not just in God, but in the God from that cult, not any other one, or think that any type of religion or spiritual belief was complete bullshit. Those were my options as a kid. And I did not know at the time that there was all of the in-betweens. I had the two extremes, and I don't like extremes. And so from a very young age, I experienced things that some people may call supernatural and I call supernormal, which made me understand the existence of a spirit realm and the existence of all sorts of clairs or the psychic abilities. I also had lots of members of my family, my maternal family still, who were very ill. And so they were constantly in and out of hospitals and in and out of comas. And I remember my aunt telling me how some of her experiences when she was in the coma, like going through the tunnel with the light at the end, or astral traveling to the top of her hospital room, and all sorts of, I was like something between 5 and 10. So it sounded absolutely amazing. I wanted to go in a coma because it was such a different experience. And I didn't realize the gravity of it because they always came back. They were ill, but they always came back. So I didn't, when they eventually died, it was a shock because they were very often dying. They were always dying, just about to die. And then they would come back. And so that's how I got into my own spirituality, because you can't have someone else's spirituality anyway, because religion is someone else's spirituality and you have to create your own. That's the only path. And then when I was 15, so that was in 1989, I went into a spiritual shop with my best friend, and I bought my very first tarot deck that I still have today. And I started reading the cards, of course, with the guidebook because I did not know their meanings, and I had no idea what I was doing, really, to be honest. And I started reading for friends,
Yeah.
and then along the way, I did it more and more, and that's actually not my main job. My main job is being an opera singer, and that's what I do for a living. And I actually forgot the initial question, but
That's
I kept
fine.
reading
No,
from
no.
there. And then as I was reading more and more tarot cards, I got more and more familiar with my psychic abilities, and then I started using these as well. I think that tarot is one of the tools. It's not the only tool. It's one of the tools that can help you find out about your psychic abilities, because I believe everybody has them. Not everybody is interested in them. And I often make the parallel between opera singing and tarot reading or psychic reading, because it's something that everybody can do. Like opera singer, we all have two vocal cords, and we all have, if you're not handicapped, you can become an opera singer. Not everybody will be good. Some people will have to train for years and be mediocre, and some people will be just amazing immediately. And not everybody thinks it's a real job, and not everybody is interested. And it's the same thing for psychic readings and tarot readings. Everybody can do them. Not everybody will be good. Some people will practice all their life and be, mediocre. Some will be good immediately, and not everybody is interested. So I like that parallel. It makes my life make sense to me.
Completely agree. I think I can't remember when I first started being interested in this, but I know that a few years back I was living in a country called Estonia,
Hmm.
and I was always a bit of a cynic, but I've always had an open mind. So that's kind of like how I was growing up, and I kind of approached spirituality and tarot and everything with that kind of like, oh, this is this Western charlatan bullshit kind of mindset, and then I sort of do what I always do, which is sit down, listen, and start researching and just viewing it. And the thing that struck me is that Eastern approaches to spirituality and tarot readings and such is completely different. Like it's viewed in a totally different way, especially in like Russia and Estonia and the surrounding countries. It's almost like a day-to-day thing, like there's a show in Russia, I think it's called Bitra Existentia or something like I can't remember
Hmm.
what it translates to, but something like journey of or search for the something like that. But point is, for those who don't know, it's essentially like I don't want to say reality talent show because that kind of demeans it a little bit, but it's that. And the thing that's really cool about it is all these people are from all the different parts of the world or different parts of the country, and they come and they help people and they try to, I don't know, communicate messages for them, or they try to help them with some sort of issue. Anyway, point is, it's viewed differently. And when I was there, it kind of, I was in contact closely with psychics and stuff. And so I started slowly opening my mind to it, still with that skepticism, but, slowly opening my mind to it. And there's a few things I actually wanted to ask. I mean, I've got so many questions for you. It's unreal. So I'll try to get to all the different ones. Well, I've got my own questions, and then I've got fan questions. Shout out to Vilma. Yeah. But I guess one of the first questions I want to ask you is, generally speaking, with regards to tarot, one of the things I learned is that you're supposed to approach it. This is what I was told. You're supposed to approach it from a sort of short-term basis. So don't ask anything that's going to be more than about 6 months, and it's more kind of supposed to give you an idea of like where things are in a particular moment and where you are, mentally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it. So when you ask the questions and then you receive the information, it gives you an idea of where things are at in that moment, but it's not set in stone. Because I think that sometimes is the misconception that people think, oh, you're telling the future. Like, it's like, I don't, this is what I understood. It's not about telling the future. It's about telling you where you are at this point in time. And if you continue in this particular path that you're on, this is where it's likely to end up.
Yeah, it's not telling the future. It's telling you how you can create your future. The different options that you have to be the creator of your future. And freedom of choice is really the number one thing to pay attention when you're reading cards. You're not telling somebody this is going to happen to you. That's if somebody does that in a tarot reading, run. It's a huge red flag. So it's not that. It's really telling you, giving a different insight, looking at your life through another window that you hadn't thought about. And it's quite an amazing tool for self-growth, really.
You said something earlier about how we all have psychic ability, how we all have, because this is something I share with you, a belief I share with you, is this idea that we all are capable of doing pretty much anything in life. But as you say, like, I think we are naturally inclined towards certain things. So what I've understand about myself as a human being is that I am more inclined to creative endeavors and anything communicative. When it comes to more practical minded stuff, I'm useless. I could maybe do it if I try really hard, but it's still, like maths, I'm always going to suck at maths. I'll just get an accountant. It's fine. But, there's always going to be that issue, right? But this idea, this concept of we're all at different spiritual levels. Like, I remember one time when I was in Estonia, someone said to me that, and this comments on this idea of like different lives. So if you believe in reincarnation or something like that, then that's kind of where we're going with this point. Do you believe in this concept of when we're born into this life or any given life, we come at a certain stage or level, and that indicates the level maybe of I don't know, insight we have, power, ability, because obviously there are people that are born into the world that, they're born into the world to have a very simple life, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm, again, just ride with me here. And then there are people that come here to do something extraordinary, exceptional, different, unique. And then, so basically, I guess what I'm saying is we all come with different purposes, different, and throughout the cycles of the lives, moving forward and forward and forward, we would kind of keep rising until we get to like let's say a really high level. But in order for us to get to that level, we have to complete whatever challenges, things we've set for ourselves in a given life. Where do you?
Well, we all come with a different purpose, and I think that we can partly decide what purpose we want to give to our life. And I'm familiar with that concept you're talking about, but I don't like it because it gives us a kind of hierarchy. Some people are more advanced, some people are better, some people, and that's also why I don't speak about spiritual gifts or psychic gifts, but I speak about psychic abilities, because anybody can practice them and learn them and grow into them. I don't like the concept of hierarchy in spirituality. That's something I don't know for sure if what the theory you're saying is real or not. I don't know. I do believe in past lives. I didn't used to, but I had such a mind-blowing experience that I believe in it now. And I have a podcast that speaks about it, actually.
What's the podcast called?
I was going to say, let me do just a little self-promotion on here. It's called I Had a Life. It's on Spotify. And it's linked in all my social medias on my snip feed link. And but I don't believe that some people are like have a higher frequency, a higher level of. We grow in our awareness all through our life, and we grow in our spirituality all through our life.
Okay,
that's what
I agree with you too, because when the idea was presented to me, I was like, well, that almost makes it seem like your life is pointless. Like if you believe in that concept, then you believe in the idea that in certain lives you come and you're not supposed to achieve anything. And I can't,
Yeah.
that doesn't sit well with me either. But the frequency debate thing, see, this is where I sit on this. I feel like there are people that are open and then there are people that are closed. And
Mm-hmm.
some people you can open up and you can, that certainly happened with me. I'm a full believer in spirituality now. Like I won't sit and I see it as a guide. So instead of like, oh, I'm definitely going to live my life according to these, no. I just keep myself open to all possibilities. And if I find myself stuck, I'm like, okay, I'm going to consult this. I'm going to see what it sort of says to me. But so there are full believers, there are people somewhere in the middle, and I think there are people that are completely closed off from any idea of spirituality or inviting something bigger than themselves into their life. And maybe they're only just fixated on this reality that we're in, this one that we've created for ourselves, this civilization. There's people in my life that I know if I would try to have a conversation about the things that we're talking about, they might think I'm crazy. They might not be able to comprehend it, or they might not be, but I think more importantly, they wouldn't be open to it. And that is a
Mm-hmm.
concept that fascinates me, this idea of not being open to it at all. Because surely everyone at least questions once in their life, like, what is the meaning of this? What is the point of this? Why am I here? Why do I get up in the morning every day and go to work? Like, surely there must be more than this. Is this what life
Absolutely. And
is?
you have some non-believers who are highly superstitious, which is also a belief system. Like, for example, I have parents who were, as I said, were atheists, and the only thing that they will go by is science. Anything that's science proved is okay, is validated by them, but anything else not. And but then in the same time, my father will not put bread upside down, because there's a belief that if you put bread upside down tomorrow, there's no bread. Why would there be no bread? I mean, rationally, why would there be no bread if it's upside down? There's no rational
Interesting.
explanation. It's a belief system. So, but I think that, you have people like that. I sometimes speak with people and I can see in their eyes that, okay, now Vanessa, you have to stop, because you're not on the same page. So just stop. And I tell that to people because I give mentoring sessions, and some people say, my family, my friends, they don't understand. And my answer to that is, well, you can share spirituality with some people, but with some people you can't. And you have to see when you're oversharing and when you're not. And spirituality is so intimate. It's such a private part of us. I mean, spirituality is as private as sexuality for me. It's something that is completely personal.
Hmm.
You don't impose it on children, and it's something that you cannot force someone into. It's so intimate. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I know the reason I'm in Manchester is because I consulted a psychic about it, a close friend of mine. And a lot of the time when people ask me about Manchester, I'm like, oh, well, I just decided on a whim, but that's not true. I sat down, the psychic. It was a really weird scenario. I'd never seen it before. I said that I didn't know where to go. I knew I was coming back to UK. The UK. That's the thing. The only thing about me that I feel is spiritual or in any way psychic, if you like, is that I trust my gut and intuition 100%. To me, that is the true guide. Like the brain, a lot of the time, the brain just lies to you, or is just like in scare mode. But no, you know what I mean. Like it's just like, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? It's like it's not going to happen. Probably not. But like the gut, just it tells you everything. Like avoid this person, don't go down this road, stay in tonight. Just little things like that. And it was telling me you're going to leave Estonia 2020. This is when it's going to happen. And I was like, okay, I know I'm going to leave. I want to leave, but I have no idea where to go. I knew I wasn't going back to London. I knew that. And so I spoke to this friend and I was like, what do I do? Like what? And she was like, okay, here's a piece of paper, write down all of these different place names, just places that you would think about going to, you could see yourself living in. And so I wrote down a bunch of different names, places I've been, places I'd like to be, and I got to Manchester, and I remember this very clearly. It was in the middle of the paper, and I sort of looked at it for a second, and then looked away. I didn't think anything, but I stopped on that particular name, and then I just moved on. Handed her the piece of paper. She had like a piece of string.
Pendulum.
Yeah, right. But she'd fashioned it. She'd made it herself with like a rock at the bottom. I think it's called divination. I might be wrong.
It is, yeah.
It is? Okay, I got it right. Hey. So she swung the pendulum like that, and she had like candlelight there, and she sort of presided over this for about 20 or 30 minutes. She then randomly comes up to me, hands me the piece of paper, and on it are various different scores out of 100. So most of them were 0. Some of them were 20. One or two were like 50-50. And then 100 was like bang on. So for those who don't know, basically, the lower the score, the less favorable it would be for me to live there. 50-50 kind of indicated like it could go either way, really. The only one that was 100% and actually favorable was Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at that and I was like, right, guess I'm going to
You can,
Manchester.
you can make a pendulum. I have a friend of mine. She has always some thread and some needle, and a needle. I mean, and that can be your pendulum with the needle at the bottom. And you don't have to have an actual pendulum that you buy in a spiritual shop. Most people like it because they're nice, but you don't have to. Yeah, I think intuition is very important, and I think we've all had experiences where all of a sudden we're thinking about someone, and boom, you come across that person, and that person calls you just as you're thinking about them, or repeating numbers that we see, or things that we just know, and then they happen, or that kind of experiences. That's all psychic abilities, and some people are not aware that it is. They call them coincidences or imagination, and you can give it whatever name you want, but that's what it is. And I think that when you were saying you listen to your intuition a lot, I think that's essential. And people do say the gut is the second brain, so there's a reason for that. And a very good exercise I like to train your intuition, because some people say I'd like to be more in tune with my intuition. I don't know how to do that. Is to have a 100% intuitive day, which is, for instance, when you're going from point A to point B, and you know that at this crossroad you have to go left because you're going to point B. But you turn your head to the right and you think, oh, it looks nice over there, but not for today. I'm going to point B, so I have to go left. Well, on a 100% intuitive day, you do turn right. And you are allowed to take 0 decisions rationally. It's only intuitive decisions. Of course, you can't do that on a work day, because that doesn't. Sometimes you can just do half a day, or maybe you can do just an hour, and that's a good place to start anyway. But it's actually quite fascinating when you try to do that, because you don't eat at normal schedules, you don't do anything as you would, and it gives you also a very different insight on how you're living your life, and that's a fantastic experience to go through. I highly recommend it.
I'm definitely gonna give that a go.
Let me know how it goes.
One thing that comes to mind, because I have moments where I just let it take over, right? And I don't feel like I'm in control. I feel like it's almost like a message. Oh gosh, that some of my community. Yes, I'm a weirdo. This is how weird it gets. Accept it, right? It's like, I feel like it's messages you're being given, right? And as you said before, I mean, you can choose to ignore them, just like I chose to ignore that message prior to us filming. You guys won't know that. It will remain a secret forever. I do apologize. But it kind of came to me, and I was like, and then I batted it away. And then sure enough, yeah. And it's interesting to me, because it's like, I feel like a lot of the time it is just telling you exactly what to do, what you need to do.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing, almost in exact detail as well, and we ignore it.
And we have these messages very often. The latest one is a beautiful one, and it has to do with my mother's passing, because before she died, I had asked. I play the accordion, right, and I want to buy a new one, and I had asked both my parents, who had bought me a violin when I was a teenager, is it okay with you if I sell the violin in order to buy a new accordion? And they had both said yes. And yesterday I was in my shower, and my accordion teacher was supposed to come on Monday. Now, the funeral is Tuesday, and I was thinking, do I really want to have an accordion lesson the day before my mother's funeral? The answer was no, but I thought I wanted to come because it's someone I dearly love, and I want to spend some time drinking some tea with her or coffee. And then I was thinking, oh, but my mother had a bank account, so I'm going to inherit some money. So maybe I don't have to sell the violin, and I can buy the accordion. And then all of a sudden, a huge guilt comes, and I'm thinking, what a horrible daughter you are. You haven't even been through the funeral, and here you are thinking about the money you're going to get. And it made me feel awful. And I thought, okay, just leave that thought aside. It's okay. You're going through a process. Just let yourself, go through what you need to go through. I sit down on my couch, and I guess to sort of numb myself out, I open TikTok, which is what most of us do to sort of, run away from our lives, or not. And anyway, that's not the point. And so I open TikTok, and the very first video that I see is a video that she had actually sent me a few months back of this guy playing Vivaldi's Four Seasons on the accordion. And that is the exact video she had sent me. And that's the first one I see on TikTok when I open it. And I completely understood that as her telling me, no, it's fine, go ahead, buy it. It'll be my gift to you. And so those are the things, it's called synchronicities. It's little or downloads, or we can call them many ways, but you need to pay attention to these signs. They're so important.
So you think they are trying to kind of tell us how to lead a good life, how to grow and get better? Is that kind of the whole point of it?
Yeah, and I understood at a quite young age that you could communicate with the spirit realm. You can communicate with your dead loved ones, and you can communicate with other people's dead loved ones if you are a psychic medium, if you're trained to do it. And I've done it very often. And I still have the imposter syndrome when I do my sessions. And initially, I didn't want to do them. I didn't want to put them out there for people to book sessions with me. And it's my best friend, the one I went to buy the tarot deck in 1989 with, who told me, but Vanessa, you have to. I'm sorry, my neighbors are making a lot of noise. You have to you can help so many people. And I told her, but what if it doesn't work one day? What do I do? What do I tell the person who came, who paid, who was looking forward to a session, and then nothing? And she says, well, you can either refund them or you can reschedule. It can happen. And so that gave me, the possibility of, if ever, taking off some of the pressure. And then another thing that I do, and I recommend for people who are, learning about their spiritual or psychic gifts, is to have a journal where you write down everything that happens to you, and that way you can come back to it and say, no, this really happened. Because sometimes I'll tell, I have things that come to mind that I receive. I don't know what other word to use. And I'll tell the person who's consulting something that makes absolutely no sense to me. Zero sense. If I say this, does it make sense? And most of the time what happens is that they burst into tears, and I know exactly what it is, and then they tell me the story. And it's just very, I don't want to give examples, because one thing I tell them is that what is done in a session is absolutely confidential. So I don't want to be saying anything that without asking for permission. But it's definitely messages that I believe we're receiving, yes. And everybody can do that, because everybody has had, as I said, the experience of just knowing something, being sure about something, and then it becomes, it's actually true. That's claircognizance. And we all have different clairs. We all have some that are stronger, some that are dimmer. And I have synesthesia as well. It's a cross wiring of the brain where you have different, I see you're frowning. You don't know what that is. Okay. Synesthesia is a cross wiring of the brain where senses are mixed. And the main one, the one that most people do have, it's like something like less than 5% of the population who has that. One of the main synesthesias, the one that most people have, is that they see letters or numbers in color, and you can't dissociate associate this letter or this number from the color. If somebody tells me that 2 is yellow, for me, it's wrong. 2 is red. And there's no way I'm changing that. But for another synesthete, it's red is wrong. And then the days of the week can also have colors. And then there's spatial sequence synesthesia, where you see concepts as sort of 3D geometrical sculptures, which actually makes maths, you were speaking about maths before, it makes maths very easy, because any kind of mathematical exercise becomes a shape, and it just clicks, and then you know the solution. It makes maths really simple. And then I know a woman who has a tea shop in Seattle, and she has lexical gustatory synesthesia. Every single word has a taste in her mouth. She can literally taste it. And then there's the chromesthesia, where music has color. I have that. Different notes will have a different color. Different compositions will have a whole kind of moving, colorful kind of flame or form. I don't know how to explain it better than that. And it's the same thing as the spiritual gifts. You have one main synesthesia, and then the other ones are dimmer. And one that I have that my sister, who's a doctor, she has synesthesia too. She doesn't have that one, and she's quite grateful not to, is the mirror touch synesthesia, which is, for instance, if you tap your cheek like this, I will feel like an echo, as if someone was tapping my cheek. So anything that somebody has within them, you feel it. And it's like being an empath times a zillion. And the people who have that as a main synesthesia, it can be quite handicapping. I'm lucky to have it as one of the dimmed versions. It's not my main synesthesia, but I have that as well. So there you go. That was a synesthesia little parenthesis.
Thank you so much for sharing. Really, really appreciate it. What would you say are the biggest challenges associated with tarot?
The biggest challenge, I think that anybody who gets into tarot, the biggest challenge is learning the meanings of the cards. And the mistake that most people do is that they want to learn them quickly, and you can't. There's too much information, and what you do have to understand is that once you know the meanings of every single of the 78 cards, you're going to keep learning about them. You know them, but you're going to keep learning about, I don't know, how they are related to history of arts, how they are related to astrology, how they are related to the 4 elements, how, so many different areas and it becomes, the more you go, the deeper it gets. And that's the biggest challenge, is learning the cards.
What do you make of I guess the only way I can really put it is the mass kind of flooding of tarot readers on apps like TikTok and Instagram and such, and because I see some of them and I can tell there's these are legitimate people that are just trying to help, but then I see a lot that I'm like, I don't know. What do you just make of it in general? What's kind of thoughts on that?
Well, obviously I get a lot, because the hashtags that I sometimes put, I don't always put hashtags, but sometimes I do, and I have a lot of spiritual TikTok, tarot talk, witch talk, that kind of stuff. So I get a lot of them on my For You page. And for me, but that's personal, and I find that if somebody's going to read cards for me, I need them to have a certain life experience. I can't, because I find that it's similar to coaching to read cards. You're going to give advice to somebody, and it's for me, it's important that that person has a certain life experience to be able to, have what it takes within them. But that's very personal. You don't have to have that. There's quite a few red flags very often on my For You page with the tarot readers, whether it's a TikTok or a TikTok live.
And what are they?
What are they? Well, if a video starts by the person that you deeply want back in your life is just about to come back in your life, I would run, I would scroll, I would just know that's not it. Some of the red flags I get because I know the meanings of the cards. And I know that a card can have several different meanings. I'm not saying there's one and only meaning to each card, but I also know the meaning that some of the cards do not have. And when I see them reading them and just, inventing as they go. And you can compare, you see, when you're reading cards, of course, your intuition has to come in. You have to let it kick in. But it's like improvising in music. You can't just take an instrument and improvise. You have to learn the skills first. You have to learn how to technically play the instrument. And that takes time. And you have to learn to do that in order to know how to play the instrument really well so that you can let go and improvise. And it's a similar pattern for tarot and intuition. You have to learn how to read the cards. You have to learn the spreads or invent your own spread, which is also possible, but you have to learn the meanings of the cards. You have to know about the history of tarot, where was it born, etc. And then you can and understand that there's a written tradition and an oral tradition, and that what's in history books is not the only thing. There's all sorts of things that you have to learn before you let your intuition kick in to help other people. So it's not what I say for people who are on social media, for your listeners who want to know whether or not they should trust somebody, what I tell my followers is whenever there's a tarot reading and you think, oh gosh, I wish that's for me, I hope it's genuine, I recommend to go to the person's profile, scroll through a few videos, see if they are, if you're like-minded, or if it's somebody who inspires you or that you can trust or that you can admire. And in that case, because if it's about, your soulmate coming back to you within the 24 hours, if you like and claim and follow and comment and share, well, maybe all the videos are that. And that means that it's just bullshit. And so, yeah, I understand that people who are starting on the app, even if they're genuine, need to get more followers, to get more views, to get more, I understand that. And I'm not saying that someone who says, please follow, please. I understand. That's how social media works. But yeah, go to the profile and look at who that person is. And that gives you already quite a good idea on whether or not you should listen to what they're telling you.
It kind of sickens me a little bit. There's so many people are out to just con. One thing that you may or may not be aware of is that I've even seen clones of your profile on Instagram. I've seen.
I've blocked them, and I keep that. I repeatedly, I always put in my videos because I didn't know what to do about it, and they were getting more and more of them, and people were telling me I got scammed, and I said, I'm sorry. I reached out to TikTok, I reached out to Instagram. They don't do anything, so okay, I can understand that they have a lot to do and they can't do anything about it. Fine, what can I do? And I decided, okay, I'm going to pin just one video, which is a scammer alert, and that's the only video that's pinned on my excuse me, TikTok profile. And then I thought, okay, people will be scammed because they've seen a tarot reading. So every time I do a tarot reading, I either say or I put it in a caption, I will never reach out to offer a reading. And to book a reading, it's only via what I call the bink in my liar, because one day I changed it around and now I don't even know which one is right. But my thing is bink in liar, and which is obviously link in bio. But yeah, so I always do that, and I once every so often, search for Vanessa on her iPhone, on Instagram or on TikTok, and then I report and block everybody, so they don't have access to my content. So then you can tell as time goes by that they only have old videos, so it's probably not me.
I have a range of different fan questions, so I'm just going to kind of hit you with all these randomly, and you see how you do. Thank you so much, Vilma, and everyone else that sent in questions. Some people believe that tarot decks kept in the home brings bad luck. Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
Totally disagree. 200% disagree.
And
they do
why?
Not.
Okay.
Oh, well, a deck is it's similar to money, really, because it's paper with something printed on it, and we give it a value, or we don't. So it's exactly the same thing. Now I'm realizing that I'm doing a lot of these comparisons with, anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just cards. It's just like playing cards. And actually today's playing cards are originally the minor arcana from the tarot minus the knights, because that would be 56 instead of 52 cards that we have in playing cards. So it's just cards. So how can cards bring bad luck?
What's the worst kind of reading you've done?
What's the worst kind of reading that I've done?
And I'll just add to this as well. I took this question as it could be a few things. It could just be maybe a setup that you didn't like, or it could be a bad experience. Maybe someone came to you and it just didn't work out, or it was all bad news. So take it however you wish.
I don't recall any very bad experiences. I'm lucky to be able to say that. I do sometimes feel that people are not as open-minded as they would need to be, and I feel frustrated because I can see that they're not receiving what I'm trying to give them. But I think the worst ones must have been the first ones, which was they were actually a lot of fun because we were sitting on my bed with, a friend, and I was trying to sort of understand what I was doing, and I guess they were really bad readings in the sense that I didn't know what I was doing, and we were just, messing around with my newly bought tarot deck. But no, I can't recall of any really bad experience like that.
Perfect. That's what it is. Nah, of course, like anything you start out in life, you're not going to be great in the beginning. And more to the point, like what you were saying before, that's something you have to train. So I imagine that your readings or your I don't know how to put it, like your thoughts in the beginning were not as strong as they are now, or like you not as clear maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially.
And also because at the beginning, even when you know the meanings of the cards, sometimes it's difficult to associate this card with that one. What do they mean when they're together?
Right.
What do they mean when this one comes before that one, or when that one comes before this one? What do I do with that? It's like a storyboard, and you have to understand it, and it can be tricky at first. Really, it's difficult at first.
This links to something we said earlier, actually. In some of the readings I got, like obviously some of them were negative. I remember, I'll give you a quick example. So I'm a big fan of professional wrestling. Yeah, I know it's sad, but all my life. And at one point, I legitimately considered becoming a professional wrestler. And I did this reading with my friend, and the interesting thing, and this is what kind of made me start believe in tarot reading, just on a side note, is that like whenever she would present the cards to me, she would never ask me anything prior to that. She had no idea what I was asking. She would just say, keep the question in your head, take the deck, and then pass it back. And that's it. And then she'd just start laying out the cards. And it used to freak me out because she would say exactly something that would make complete sense to what I was thinking. So in that particular scenario, I had asked if I should become a professional wrestler, and it said that I am not mentally or physically strong enough to do it. But, and this is the key, my key takeaway from this and the lesson. Now, I don't want to become a professional wrestler. That was just a fleeting thing. But the most valuable lesson I took from that was that circumstances and your mindset can change at any one time. And so that a reading like that might be negative in that moment, but in the future, when you ask the same question, it could be positive, but that's entirely up to you. And that I like this idea. There is control, not your fate is not decided. You can change that, but when the readings are made, they are reflective of that particular moment. So if I had tried to pursue that at that given time, I would have failed in my goal because I was not mentally or physically ready for it.
I understand.
Yeah.
And it is true. It's very, very important. We've said it already, but I want to say it again, that you create your future, right, and nobody can tell you this is what it's going to be. That is essential, really.
Apart from superstition, do you agree or disagree in that tarot should be read alone or for yourself?
No, I think you can read it for others, obviously, since that's what I do on a daily basis. And alone, sometimes some of my daughter's friends ask me to read cards for them. Mm-hmm. And my daughters the first reflex is to say, do you want me to leave?
Okay.
When the friends ask, the daughter says, do you want me to leave you two alone so that my mom can read cards for you and you can be in a private place? And
Oh,
I
interesting.
find that very respectful. And some of the friends say, yeah, I'd like to be alone with her. And some say, no, you can stay. It's okay. But I find it important to ask the person for who the cards are going to be read, if they're comfortable with people being around or not, because that's personal and everybody will have a different reaction.
What are dowsing rods? Who move
Douse
dowsing rods? Sorry. What are dowsing rods? Who moves them? And can anybody use them to get answers?
Anybody can use them. Dowsing rods are kind of metal sticks in an L shape.
Okay.
The part that you hold in your hand doesn't move, and there's something in them. The stick is sort of put in it. I don't have them here, but anyway, and it's like a pendulum. It works the same way as a pendulum. So one thing you have to be aware of is the ideomotor phenomenon, which is when you hold your hand still and you're holding a pendulum, you have micro movements. Even if you look at your hand and it looks as if it's not moving, you have micro movements because we're human. So the micro movements are going to give an impulse, and then that's going to move the pendulum. Now, to use dowsing rods or a pendulum for divination, you have to believe in channeling. Now, that's a belief system. As I said, we can communicate with the spirit realm. That falls into my belief system. It doesn't fall into everybody's belief system. If you are somebody who believes that we can channel, then you are somebody who can believe in the use of pendulums and dowsing rods or any kind of similar tools. Because I have another tool that's a divination tool that has a kind of a long metallic stick with a crystal at the end, and that one moves like this or like that or like this, or anyway, you have several different ones. So to use them, you have to believe that you can channel and that the message is coming through you, and that is what is moving the dowsing rods. Now, when I use my dowsing rods, I am, so as I said earlier, I don't I'm not religious, and I do, however, believe in something that could be called ancestor worshipping. And I did several past life regressions, plus a session that was 7 hours long of hypnotic trance. It
Jesus.
was once 4 and then once 3. It wasn't 7 hours in one go, but 4 hours is really long and 3 hours
Mm-hmm.
is very well. In which I found a lot of answers in regards to the ancestors that I believe in, if I can say it that way. And so when I use my dowsing rods, I communicate with, it's my great great grandmother that I ask the questions to. And so you can use them, the dowsing rods. Anybody can try them. Some people will be very skeptical. One story that I really like is, I think it was in Ireland. There was this old man who had a shop where he sold dowsing rods, and somebody came in, a man came in, he was very skeptical, and the old man said, fine, no problem. Just take this pair of rods and we're going to go to a house that's not very far. And it's an abandoned house that is said to be haunted. And so, the man kind of rolled his eyes and whatever, let's go. He takes the rods, and the old man said, well, hold them in your hands just before you enter the house and just look at how they don't move. And the man looks at the rods and says, yeah, of course, they don't move. And then the old man says, well, enter, go through the door. The door was open. Go through the door and just see what the rods are doing. So the man moves forwards, walks through the door, and the rods cross. And so he says, okay, yeah, I'll try again. So he does it and it does it again. And he says, it's just because I'm moving forward. So he turns to another direction, moves forward, and the rods don't cross. And so and he tried it, and they were there for like a long time. I'm not going to give a timeline, but for a long time. And then he came back and said, okay, you got me. That was an amazing experience. Thank you for that. And he bought the pair of rods and left. So, I mean, I like to tell that story because it shows you that, there are vibrations, there are things that we don't understand, and and I don't really, and I have my explanation that I just gave before, which is the channeling explanation, but there are other ones. And I've had moments, for example, in one of my very good friend's garden, there's grass everywhere, and there's a place where the grass is different. And she thought it was in a circle, and we went with the rods and we determined that it wasn't. I'm going to keep the reason why this place is important private because I think she'd like me to. But and we discovered that it wasn't a circle, it was another kind of shape, with thanks to the rods because of the vibration of the place. So it's a fantastic tool. I really recommend trying it. But I do have people that I occasionally mentor who are telling me the rods don't work for me. They do not move. So,
Interesting. I'm going to move on to more like spirituality and paranormal questions now. When you meet someone, can you see their aura, or do you get specific vibes about a person, what a person is like, as well as their intentions?
well, I've spoken about that a lot on my social media. I do see now that's the same thing I was telling you before about the synesthesia. Good thing we went into that before, is
Mm-hmm.
that I see colors for days, for months, for the years, for the numbers, for the letters. Every single thing I read, even if it's written black on white, I have colors in it. I can't see it differently. And I see colors for people. And the funny thing is, sometimes people have a color that doesn't fit with the color of their name. And some other people have a color that is very coherent with my synesthesia, with the color of their name. And so, yeah, I do. I see the color of the person, but it's auras are more like something that is around you. And I have the impression I can see them, but I don't really see them. I don't see anything here. I see something in front of the person, like around the heart area. And
Interesting.
their soul.
I gotta ask, do I have one? What's mine?
Of course you have one, yeah. And actually, I was going to say before, it's very coherent with your name. Your color is very coherent with the color of your name because Christian is a name that has a lot of shiny gold and deep burgundy, like wine type of color. It has a lot of black as well. It like has a shade like a halo of black around it, and it has some brown and some greenish shade. And then Reeves is very silvery, light, translucent blue, and
Mm.
it's a name. It's a name and a surname that are both very grounded and very floating, so quite aligned. And it's the same type of colors. You do have the golden burgundy glow in your heart place that I see. Very coherent.
Is that like a positive thing? Does that suggest? I mean, because from what you were explaining it to me, it sounds maybe overall positive with shades of
Yeah,
negative. Is that
it's
right?
not so that the colors have not much to do with the personality of the person.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not negative. It's just the way it is.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then I get, of course, the vibe from somebody. I mean, many people have experienced that when you come into a room and you can sense that something's wrong, or when you meet someone, you feel something's off. Or on the contrary, you come into a room and you can feel that, wow, this is a super cool place to be. Or you meet someone and you think, yes, I was supposed to meet that person. So that's something completely unrelated to the color. It's very.
Okay, what's my vibe then?
Ah, I like your vibe. You have a
Good
very good vibe.
vibes. All right.
I feel that there's a lot more to you than what you show, and it's I can feel a very tormented soul behind that big smile and those very clear and structured explanations that you give to your listeners. But I can sense that there's something very deep and yeah.
We're getting there. I think one thing I've begun to change in more recent years is how open I am on with it. Like I think there are certain things that you keep to yourself, and while I am in the sphere of the public eye and the things that put out there and stuff, I think there are always things that you have to keep to yourself. But I've always been pretty transparent about things. I don't have anything to hide. But I think that I don't know if I would use the word tormented, but I would agree with the concept of mm, troubled or battling is probably the word I'd use. It's like every
I like,
day,
yeah.
yeah. It's. I think that's why things
You're
like
always feeling things in your soul or in your mind. That's something that you're always doing.
absolutely. I mean, I feel like things like this are very positive for me because I meet people from around the world and they have different life stories and it's different things to share and it's positive and it's something that um I think one of the things we're trying to do in life is find some degree of peace, some sense of purpose. I think I'm still trying to find that. Um, I go back and forth with myself all the time, but I think now I'm beginning to understand who I am, which is quite a profound thing. Because that's a battle I've always had, and many years ago it used to be people telling me who I was or people setting limits for who I was, and now I'm at a point where I decide all of that, and I understand that ego is not a bad thing, but you have to keep it in check. So what does that mean? Well, you need a certain degree of, I would say, positive ego to push yourself out there and have the confidence to do things and get things done. And that will rub people the wrong way sometimes. People will think you're arrogant, narcissistic. They'll think do you think you're better than everyone, etc. And I understand where they're coming from, but it's all to do with like perspective. You have to believe in yourself and what you do completely. And that's the only way that you will achieve success in your life in whatever endeavor. And I think it applies to everything, relationships, career, friendships, everything. It's completely all of those things.
And you have to be true to yourself, not, and when you say that you're looking for a sense of peace in your life and that you're beginning to know who you are, it's actually a lifelong journey because
Yes.
you never reach the goal. You never do. And it's okay not to. I remember one day asking my mother a few years back, so she was in her early 70s, and I was asking, Mom, when does it kick in, that sensation of feeling grown up? Because that's what we're aiming for when you know who you are, when you know,
Yeah.
as children, you look at grown-ups and you have the impression they have it all figured out and they know what they're doing. And I said, when does it kick in, that sensation of feeling grown up? So I was already a mother of three, and I was asking that to my more than 70-year-old mom, and she said, I'm still waiting. She died without getting there because you don't. You grow, but you don't reach. When you reach, it's finished.
My favorite thing connected with that is the moment where like there's always that moment when you're a teenager or a young adult where you're like, oh, I have this real big problem right now. I need an adult to come help me, right? And then there'll be a moment, maybe you'll be on your own, maybe you'll be with other people, and you realize like, oh, you'll ask yourself that question. You'll be like, oh, I need an adult to help me right now, and then you'll be like, oh, I'm the adult.
Yeah.
Oh, oh no, oh, like, and one thing that's hit me now is you said about how I was like a tormented soul and everything. Like I have suffered with self-esteem issues, confidence issues my whole life, and it's only in the last 2 or 3 years, I would say, that I've got to a point where I'm comfortable with myself as a human being, as a man. Um, it took me years to understand like what it means to be a man, and I think it's something that you're still always working on and figuring out, just the same as being a human. But you do get to decide what it means. For me, it's a sense of responsibility, and I think it's more, forget about being a man, it's more just about like being an adult, like taking responsibility for things, finding the strength in yourself. Like when life presents you a problem, like you don't panic. Like you feel the anxiety, your heart's, but you calm yourself and you're like, I can deal with this. Every problem has a solution. We will deal with this. And it's amazing for me in my own life to see that change from that scared little boy. To be honest, which wasn't even that long ago. I'm about to turn 30 now. I remember being like 25, 26 and still being clueless and terrified. And now I'm like this man who's been through a bunch of shit, and I find myself giving advice to people.
And there will be moments when you'll feel like a lost child again. Oh wait, I have oh no.
Are you about to
Okay.
leave us?
No, no, I'm not. No, someone was trying to call. Can you hear me?
I can hear you absolutely fine. Yeah.
Yeah, there will be moments where you're going to feel like a lost child again, and it's okay because you do,
Mm.
3 steps forwards, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 3 steps back, and that's not a problem. It's a cha-cha. That's what it is. You're dancing a cha-cha, and life is that. We're dancing life.
I love that. Have you ever met anyone with energy so negative that it scared you? Sorry, the thing that's making me laugh is the question itself, not the. I imagine the experience itself is horrible, but the just the way the question, like it just took through me. It's like, oh, like
Mm,
I guess that happens sometimes, does it?
I don't think it scared me, but I did meet sometimes people where I felt, like I was saying before, something was off, and I didn't want to engage in any kind of
Yeah,
conversation with those. I do, yeah. And so yes, I did, but it didn't scare me. No, I wasn't scared.
there were. I remember my friend who's a psychic. She's an older woman. She's about in her mid 50s, I think. Um, and sometimes we would show her photographs of people, and from that she was able to ascertain as to whether or not a person was, good or bad per se. And we'd show her certain photos, and she'd just be like, "Don't show this to me. Like this, get this away from me. Like this person is, I don't know, evil, or I don't know, like has bad intentions, something like that." And some of the people that we showed photos to, they didn't. I wouldn't say they were evil, but they turned out to be not great people. But there were some surprising ones. I remember showing her a picture of a celebrity who I always greatly admired and thought was really, really great. And she was like, "This person is hiding evil." And I was like, "Oh my God." Like, and it was a really high profile actor that everyone's loves very dearly. And it forced me to kind of look at things like, no matter what a person shows you on the
Hmm.
outside, they could be hiding something. And it's like the old sayings go about the idea of the devil. Like the devil will come um as your best friend, and can completely betray you. So you have to be very careful.
Yeah, so true, so true.
Ooh. Anyway, so I get that the heebie-jeebies. So you spoke about it a little bit earlier, but let's go a bit more into intuition. How can we develop our intuition to serve us better in decisions we make in our everyday lives?
Yeah, I gave that exercise for the intuition. Um, I don't know of any better exercise than the one I gave earlier on in the podcast. I
Okay.
find that one is. Um, and then I find that if you want to grow on that path, journaling about it is really good as well, because then you can, come back to how things happened, and you can learn what patterns you like to use or how you want to function with it.
Okay, a bit of a deeper one now.
Okay.
What do you believe happens after death?
I don't know. Um, so, as I said, one of my past life, I had several past life regressions, and they were, like I said, mind-blowing experiences. And I did that with a woman who also lives in Switzerland, and but we actually did them via Zoom because she lived too far away from me, and I is the person that I recommend for past life regressions. If anybody is interested in that, her name is Sonia Bira, and she's also linked on my Bink in my bio. And in one of the experiences I had with her, I was in Ireland, and I was just some kind of young woman. I was nobody. And I didn't have any experiences where, I was like Cleopatra or Julius Caesar. Like people have these experiences where they are the Virgin Mary, and nothing of that kind. I was always somebody who was very mundane, but had very deep experiences nonetheless. And I saw myself um, running away from the men in the village who wanted to, burn me at the stake, and going into the sea and trying to swim to the other side and drowning. And I felt myself drowning. And then all of a sudden I was telling her, oh, I can see myself going up, but I don't know where I'm going. And she said, just let it follow. And there was some kind of spirit realm. That's what I saw. Now, is that my imagination creating it because I've heard so many stories, or is that really? As a matter of fact, I went to her and I said, I'm not sure I believe in past lives, so I'm not sure I should be doing this. And she said, it's okay. Whether it's your imagination or an actual past life, it doesn't really matter. What counts is what you're going to get from it. If it's going to help you, and the experience that it's going to give you, and the emotions that it's going to give you, that's what's important. And I said, okay, then if that's how it is, I can go ahead and have the experience. And it was such a mind-blowing experience that I ended up believing in past lives. Also because I went to the place, because I have to develop a little bit. So I had this experience, and there was a very clear picture of the place. So I sort of scribbled it on a paper. I cannot draw, but I scribbled it, and I showed my followers. I said, where do you think this is? I need to find this place. And so everybody was commenting on that video saying, I think it's there, it could be here, it could be there, it could be there. And I spent months of my evenings on Google Earth looking for the places they had told me. And I could see, no, that doesn't fit because there's not this and that. There were so many details, and ended up finding it. And it's Bray, south of Dublin. It's a little town south of Dublin. And then all sorts of details made me understand what period it was in. It was at the end of the 19th century. And then I went there, and I had never been over there. And I just knew my way around. I knew the place. And there's even this, I was looking for a church with a fountain in front of it, because that's one of the things I had seen now, a church with a fountain in front. It's just, you have so many all over the world. But in Bray, I did not find a church with a fountain in front. And I thought, you know what, maybe that was wrong. And one day I was with my husband, who at the time wasn't my husband yet. And I told him, let's go. I want to find that church. I know where it is. On the map, it doesn't say there's a church, but I want to go. And so he says, okay, whatever. He had already followed me all the way. He was in me with it, with me in it. And so we walk, and I arrive at this building, and it's town hall, and the building has, it looks like a church, and it has, it very similar to a church. There's a fountain in front, and now it's a McDonald's, I think. But
Oh
anyway,
God.
and or a post office. I don't remember what it is. Anyway, and I say, but there was the market around here, and I feel like the streets are not big enough for the market that I had seen. And there was a historical panel, and I go and I look, and it said that in the 19th century, that's where the market took place. And so it was exactly where I knew it was. And that, I have lots of examples like that where I just found my way over there, and I know that I lived there in the 19th century. I just know it.
I often wonder about the concept of past lives. Like I have no memory or any of that. I know for me as a person, I don't think I've ever spoken about this publicly. I feel like I have a deep connection to Europe for some reason, specifically Germany and other, I don't know. I feel like when I was in Estonia, I felt, I know it's so cliche to say, but I had essentially a spiritual awakening when I was there. And I've never been able to shake that idea. Like as much as I do believe in the concept of like your homeland is part of you and stuff, and that's why I do feel comfortable back in the UK. At the same time, I feel like part of me is always in Europe, and when I tracked back my family history, on my dad's side, there's Irish and French family distantly. On my mum's side, nothing. It's just we've been in England since forever. Boring. And I just kind of thought to myself, like, okay, maybe what I'm feeling is from a past life. Maybe that's what that is, because I can't understand where this deep connection comes from and why I feel it and why it's there, right? And another thing I thought a lot about, I'm a big Doctor Who fan. And I like the concept of, obviously the regeneration is essentially like reincarnation. That's what that's trying to say. But something that's really interesting, two things. One is just how the character changes each time. And the essence of the character is always the same, but the personality is always different. And I remember in one particular episode, as the Doctor is about to regenerate into a new Doctor, he comments on how, and he's talking about human life, but he's obviously referring to himself as well. He says that, we are different people throughout our lives, but we are still that same person at the core, right? But we become different things, and that's okay, because that's what should happen. Like for instance, when I look at Christian from 5-10 years ago, that's a different person, and I recognize that. I remember how I felt. I remember how I thought. It's I can't relate to that person anymore, and it's good that happened. Like when you see people you went to school with and they haven't changed, that's bad. You need to move forward. You can't live in the past. You because time is relative, and it's a moment, and it dies and it fleets, and then you move forward, and you can only ever move forward. Another element to this, which I think is more tied to what we're talking about, is this idea that, like, what if the soul is always the same on its core, and each of those lives is like a different reimagining of that same soul exploring a different facet of existence? You know what I mean? Like, it's when I think about that concept, I think about this idea that, okay, this version, Christian, this will never exist again. This is just one. But this idea that in other lives, I've essentially played other characters, other parts. Like, it's a different, but I may have approached them in the same way because that comes from the soul, or similar. I don't know. And that's what grips me.
Yeah, I don't really know where my beliefs stand in regards to that. I know that in that 7 hours long trance, there was also finding your soul family and people that you are connected to throughout different lives, and it felt right to me as well. But I mean, our belief systems, they evolve, they change,
Yes.
they are what they are in the moment. And as you said, there's old versions of you that you've left behind, and that's really good. But I don't know where they're going to evolve in regards to past lives, because I have only had one or two experiences in past life regressions, and I don't feel that I have enough knowledge to really have a clear idea of what I think about it, really. I know I believe in it, but that's already a huge step for me.
Do you believe in guardian angels?
Well, define guardian angel. I mean, it's a bit because it can mean something very different for each and every one of us. As I said, if I had to put words on it, my thing would be ancestor worshipping and animism, actually, where I think that there's the divine in every single thing, like in a flower, in the wind, I'm very afraid of storms because I feel like we're being told off, and that kind of stuff. But guardian angels, in one way, yes. I mean, because I believe that you can communicate with your ancestors and they look out for you. So yes.
Do you think that they're what? Because I guess what the question I'm really asking there is, like, do you think that they're actively watching us at all times, or do you think that that's like a fleeting thing or something you have to tap into? Because something that I've been told is that supposedly I have one watching over me, and we've theorized over the years that might be my mother's late father, so my grandfather, who I never met. He passed away when my mother was a teenager. But when I was very, very young, 2 or 3 years old, there were a few instances where, two in particular. One, I was in the house that I grew up in, that we were in for only a few years, and in my cot, I got up, stood up, and started screaming that there was a man in the corner. My mum came in, there was no one there. And then maybe 6 months later, or around that same time period, we were in a different house, a house that was noted as being somewhat haunted, or something was wrong there, maybe bad energy, I don't know. It was a horrible area anyway. And in that instance, the door was shut. So I guess I was a toddler, I could walk around or something like that, but the door was shut and it wouldn't open. And apparently was screaming. I felt trapped, as if there was someone in that room. I don't remember either of these instances. I was too young to remember it. But that's what I've been told. And I always theorized that maybe it was my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always thought that, because here's the thing about my life. I've been through a lot of horrible things, but at the same time, I've always felt like I was somewhat protected. Like whatever happened, there was like I always kind of landed on my feet in despite of that. And I've always been very grateful and thankful for that. And I try to just always continue to be, and try to do right by others. Like I'm not really religious. Like I go back and forth on where I feel, but what I feel inside me is that like I need to do right by others and do the right thing, tell the truth, be kind to people, go out of my way for other people where I can, and stuff, and do my best to be a decent human being, not to get like a reward or to be rewarded in another life, but because it's the right thing to do. Like I feel that very intensely. And I feel like part of that is to say thanks for having been protected and over the years and stuff. I feel like it's part of it's that. But yeah, I've never really been able to ascertain what that is. It could just be in my head. It could, maybe I'm
Maybe
being
we
watched
never
over.
will, but I definitely relate to what you say. And that's how I feel as well. And I think it's the right way around. I feel it's because some people who are religious will be good because they want to get brownie points with God and be able to go to get into heaven. And I think that's wrong. And I think it's more the other way around. And that's what I see in ancestor worshiping or thanking. It's also when you say it doesn't make sense to be here, you can also be thankful that all your lineage have brought the possibility for your life to actually exist, so also I'm turned to the for the family tree more
Yes.
than points with some sort of God.
Yeah, I will just say on a side note with that, like if there is a God, God ain't gonna give you brownie points for going to church or whatever. Like I feel like if there was a God or something like that, they would look at who you are, your intentions, how you treat others. These are the things that are important. It doesn't matter if
Absolutely. And
you know.
religion is someone else's spirituality.
Sure, yes.
Religion is based on a book, and the book is written hundreds of years ago by some person, and then other people thought, oh, you know what, those rules are cool, and I don't have to think about my own rules, so I'll go by those rules because I agree with them. And then more and more people got into that, and it became a religion. When there's not enough people, it's called a cult. When there's enough people, it's called a religion, but they're the same thing. Somebody else's spirituality, and you have to make your own rules to have your own spirituality, your own rituals. Start family traditions, because a tradition is once it was the first time somebody said, let's do that. And then the year after they said, hey, remember we did that last year? Let's do it again. And then again and again, and it becomes a tradition. And then everybody's celebrating Christmas. And, and it's just, at one time it was the first time. It's a pagan ritual, by the way, Christmas. And it was, you have to be able to start your own traditions, your own rituals, and find your own way. And I think that's essential. It's so personal.
My dad's very spiritual. We we always go through the same thing where he'll pick me up and we'll have this little drive to where he lives, and it's like in the countryside. It's really nice. And he'll just sit and talk about everything, religion, spirituality, all sorts of stuff. And we just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I like to like I believe in the same things he does, but I just like to play devil's advocate and just pick at his brain and be like, well, but what if this? What if
Who
that?
is he? You said he picks me up. Who's that?
My dad.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just fun to go back and forth on these conversations. But one of the things I remember him saying recently, which stood out to me, was this idea that, you know, if you do believe in God, then this idea that, like, you know, the house is my church, the outside is my church, you know, this concept that it's you can be anywhere and have that connection. And as you said earlier, it's a very personal one. And you know, I think that no one should be told that their own belief system is wrong. I think it's just kind of like, it's the most important thing to pay attention to is like, how are you doing by others? How are you giving to
I
this
agree.
world and taking from this world? What are you doing? What's your impact? Like, you know,
Yeah.
that's what's important.
You're right. Yeah, it is important. Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, I hate that question. It's like, what's your favorite this or that? Because first I have all these ideas that come into my mind, and I can't. They're all fighting to be me, 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 me. And then afterwards, there's so much like noise that I like send everyone out of the room, and now
Mm.
my head goes blank.
There's two things
Mm.
with that question that I never prime anyone for that question, and there's a reason for that. The reason is because I've had people ask me the same question as well, and I will just say the first thing that comes to me because I feel like the first thing is the right thing. Because the reality is we've been given a lot of advice in our lives, but I like to ask that question because it's like, what's the best advice that connects for you, that feels right for that you, when you heard that you were like, yeah.
No, still no answer. I think that I'm going to be 49 this year, and I mean, in 49 years of life, you hear a lot of advice, as you said. Um, I can't choose,
That's
and
okay, no worries. Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry.
all good. You don't have to
No,
apologize. It's fine. It's fine. It's a difficult question to answer. I also hate it as well, even though I asked all my guests. Because like when I was first asked it, I was like, oh, the tables have turned, and I think I said the first thing that came to mind, and it was you know, it was something that I was genuinely good advice, but whenever you get asked that, you kind of want to say like the thing, like this is the advice you need to go by. This is what works for me, and it's like,
you know what? I have
um,
one. I
okay,
want to pick one randomly. One thing that's very important is to stop worrying about what people think about you, because people are actually, no offense, not thinking about you. People are worried about what people are thinking about them. So they'll spend like a fraction of a second thinking about you, and then they'll go back to being worried about what people think about them. So don't give it too much importance, and that will set you free in life. So that's an important one. It's not the best, but it's one of the best. It's in the top 10.
right, you're gonna hate me. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
uh,
Sorry.
I don't know. I
this
don't
one's
know.
this one's much more personal because this is like your life. This is not any something that someone's communicated. This is just throughout the years of you living on this planet and you throughout everything you've gone through. What's the biggest thing that stands out that you've learned?
I think that being forgiving with yourself is something that I had to learn throughout the years, and releasing the past versions of you and accepting to move forward. I mean, the biggest life lesson is, yeah, being as kind as you can to yourself. That was something I had to learn.
Beautiful. I want to say a massive thank you for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. My final question to you is, do you have any upcoming projects or some final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Upcoming projects. upcoming projects, musical ones, but I'm not sure it's the place to speak about that. Plus, it's going to be very Geneva based. I
You
have
absolutely
one.
can if
I
you
know.
want.
I one thing that is relatively new. It's not upcoming, but it's new. Is my Patreon.
Hey,
That I've created recently, and that I absolutely am very thankful for the promotion I can do on here for my Patreon, which is has several different subscriptions, and it's all also linked on my social media. It's always Vanessa and her iPhone, whatever social media platform. Actually, I chose that because at the time my daughters had Instagram and they were very young teenagers, and I thought, you know what, I have to go check what's going on Instagram. And when I had to choose a username, I said, okay, I'm Vanessa. I don't want to put my last name, and I want to. What am I going to post on here? I'm going to post pictures that I take with my iPhone. So it's Vanessa and her iPhone. And so that became my first social media username, and I kept it. So that's why. And people sometimes think it's Heriphone, like, some kind of Greek goddess that they
all right,
wouldn't
yeah.
have. And they was that Heriphone, and they asked me, "Can you tell us about that goddess? What goddess? Heriphone?" Oh no, it's her iPhone. It's a lot more basic than you thought. Sorry about the disappointment. And anyway, but yeah, so the Patreon is the latest one that I'm very excited about.
Absolutely fantastic. I'll include those links in the show notes, and yeah, best of luck with that.
Good the podcast as well, because it's fun to listen to. It's about past lives, and you can, if you want to, also include Sonia Bira, which is the woman who I did the regression with, and I recommend her highly. Everybody I sent to her came back mind blown. So there you go.
Brilliant. Well, I
Thank
want to
you.
say
Thank you for having me, because I was not sure when I woke up this morning if I was going to be capable with what I'm going through. And because with the passing of my mother last Tuesday, plus I've had sort of my life exploded at the same time for all sorts of different reasons that I'm not going to go into. But so it's kind of a nightmare right now. And this was a little bubble of loveliness. So thank you for that. It means
that,
a lot.
that
It came at the
means
it means a lot.
that means a lot to hear. I'm glad I could bring you some positivity at this time, and
You
yeah, I wish you the very best. You take care of yourself, and thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
To all the listeners of the Christian Reeve Podcast, as always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.